So I've got a 2013 Chevy Cruze here that had a pretty typical problem with the air conditioning, I guess. The air conditioning mechanism quit transferring between the defrost, the front vents, and the floor vents. And so it's kind of stuck in the defrost position, but it was almost stuck half closed. So we weren't getting very much air conditioning out. And so I was watching some YouTube videos online like you do to fix your car. And they made it sound real easy, which it probably would have been, because taking this dash cluster out wasn't hard. It was just a couple of bolts and popping some trim, and then a single plug there for your dash cluster. So it's pretty easy to actually take out and pop back in. So those of you that are do-it-yourselfers, don't be afraid of that. That's not as complicated as it used to be. A single plug there. It's the only thing in the area. You really can't get it confused. It can only go in and out one way. You just got your plugging mechanisms and stuff there. That's pretty simple. Anyways, so by taking this out, you've got access and get one hand in here and one hand in here, and you can get in, and you see this white gear there. It's got a little 5.5 millimeter screw in the center of it right there, and you loosen that up, and then you can slide that gear off, and back in there they've got this little piece in there. It's kind of poorly made, and these edges here and here have a tendency to break, which makes it so you lose all your power there on your gear arm, so that it can't rotate. And so if you're real lucky, you can just pop that little 5 millimeter screw off. This comes out pretty easy. You order the new one. It's a lot heavier duty built. The one that you order offline, the GM replacement part, not too expensive. I think it's like less than $20. And you can slide that back in there and fix it, unless you run into the problem that I did. When I pulled this out of here, wasn't broken, and I was like, what is going on there? So I got digging in there a little bit more, and got started looking up at it from laying down on the floor and looking up from underneath, and it turns out there's not one of those gear arms, but there are two. And this first one's real easy to get to. In fact, as soon as I loosened that gear up, it pretty much fell out onto the floor for me. So that would have been a real easy 25-30 minute fix, and this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. If you run into the problem that I had, where the second one's broke, that's a lot trickier. I actually had to try and find a 5.5 millimeter wrench, box-in wrench, because I could not get a socket up in there, not even a little 1/4 inch socket with the 5.5 millimeter in there. There's just not enough clearance. Had to be a box-in wrench. You're not gonna be able to find these anywhere in town. I went to Lowe's, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, Napa, all the different auto parts stores, hardware stores. Nobody will carry a 5.5 millimeter box-in wrench, so you're gonna have to get that off of Amazon. I had to order a little small metric wrench kit, come with a whole bunch of them off Amazon. It was only like 12 bucks, so it wasn't a huge deal. Just took a couple of days to get here. And so once I did that, I had to come down here, and there's little actuators in here. You can see this is the first air conditioner actuator. That one's easy to get to, but of course the other one is the one that you need to actually take off. Get an angle on it here. It is basically attached to this black gear here. And so what I had to do was, up here there's a 5.5 millimeter screw here that I had to loosen, and you can only get about 1/8 of a turn at a time with your wrench. And then there was another one on this side, you could get about 1/4 of a turn. So this one I took all the way out, and the other one I just loosened up, and that got this black gear loose enough that I could pull that white gear out enough to get this broken one out. So now that I got it out, I can come and put this one back in. So I was watching some videos. This is the point where I'm at. I've got it all apart and I'm getting ready to put it back in. I'll let you know how that goes, but it was a little bit harder than I thought it was gonna be. So here I am from up underneath, looking in here, and you can see this this screw here. That's the one I had to take out from the bottom. And the reason it's so hard to get to is that black gear there is out over the front of that. And I haven't figured out if that black gear comes off or not, because I didn't take that all the way off of there, but I imagine you'd have to take it all the way off to get that black gear off. But you have to get that black gear out of the way, because this white gear right here, it's slotted on the back so that you can't pull that white gear off if that black gear is still there. So you got to get loose enough to get that white gear all the way off in order to get your piece off. And then here you can see I've got that new little black gear arm. I've got that put back in there. And so try and pay attention a little bit of how you took it off so you can put it back in the same way. Otherwise, some of those videos I've seen said you have some problems getting it timed right. I believe I've got that back in there the right way, but I'll start putting it back together. I got this screw started putting back in. And then I'll let you know if I run into any more problems. So I've tightened these screws back up. I don't know if you can see here, I put the little 5.5 millimeter with the little bracket back on the wheel. Timing it was a little bit tricky, just like they said. I found that if you can kind of get it into place and start cycling it through the different settings, it'll kind of make some clicking noises as it overextends itself a little bit and kind of gets itself reset. But it'll kind of go back in on its own. I kept trying to do it by myself and that wasn't working a little bit, so it's actually easier to just run it through all of your settings with that screw kind of in there a little bit, and then it'll start self-tracking itself. So I got it all back together, and it's working, cycling through all of the different settings. So now I just got to go through and everything I took apart, get back together. And like I said, you know, if you break the upper one, this is only the dash cluster where you got some screws here, and here. With your plug, if you got to get to this lower one, you end up having to take out some of this paneling and stuff in order to get there and see what's going on. I take the airbag compressor unit or whatever this is, the airbag out of here, and the little paneling here wasn't too bad. There was 3 screws on this airbag, 2 that you could see before you took the paneling off, and then this third one right here, you have to get this little paneling snapped off before you can get to that one to get this airbag out of the way. So hopefully you get lucky and it's the upper one that breaks, but still doable if it's the lower one. Had I known that there was 2, I would have ordered 2 of these and replaced both of them at the same time, because I'm 90% sure that within a year or 2 I'm probably gonna have to get back in here and replace that upper one. Luckily it's easy to get to, but I highly recommend, if you run into this problem with your thing and you're gonna fix it, I would just, these are pretty cheap, I'd go ahead and order 2, replace both of them at the same time if you want to get that deep. If it's just the top one, replace the top one and keep the second one for later on if you need to. But that's what I've found.